Good evening, everyone. We have got a little poll for you just to start off with, so we know um, what it is and how much people, how much experience people have got. So I can see that Leslie there is this comes from the Ealing Harvest Mice group. So welcome to that. So you've got quite a bit of experience to go with this, and hopefully you can expand the areas you're going to be looking at outside of your main area. So we'll just wait for that to come through. And as we do that, I'll just get to share my screen. And according to the poll, it looks like there's basically 85% of you or thereabouts haven't done any harvest mice work in the past, but there's some of you who have. So it's just a few last people just going in. So it's about that sort of level. So the idea behind tonight, more than anything else, is to try and to get you able to go out there and actually find some harvest mouse evidence, normally through nests, but we'll sort of take things on from there. Please ask as many questions as you like. We have enough time to answer those verbally at the end, as well as potentially, if we don't have enough time, then we'll answer them on in writing to go along with this presentation. So my name's Derek Crawley. I'm the Vice Chair of the Mammal Society. I also lead on local groups and training. And I'm also one of the main partners in the coordination of this Harvest Mouse survey. We've been doing this now for a number of years. I think this is our 5th year of actually doing things, and therefore we've accumulated some knowledge, but we've still got quite a lot that we need to find out. So let me just move on to the next slide. So just to give you a sort of a quick overview within this, we did a review of the population of status of British mammals way back in 2018. And from that, we saw that there was, in total numbers, the estimates are always plus or minus a couple of thousand, but it does give us something to work on. You can see that basically from 95 down to 2016, we dropped by about 2,000 or 200,000 animals. So that's quite a significant problem within that one. Under the ICUN red list, it's now what's classified as a near threatened in Britain. So it's not as bad as it could be, but it could be an awful lot better. And that's partly because we don't know where all the animals are. We don't know their distribution. We don't know their status. And there's still a lot about their ecology that we don't actually know. The evidence in occupancy we've got there, but not within density. That's one of the issues. And we've got a reduction in the number of records per 10k square, which is also a cause for concern, which is why we brought the survey in to begin with. And you can see there's generally been a decline from about the 70s through with the number of harvest mice that's around. And we need to work out why that is. And one of the ways to work that out is to find where they are and find what habitats they're using and what's happening to those habitats over a period of time. Now, with this, there is I'm just going to go on to the next slide because I think I've doubled up on this one. With this one, you have, there we are, the Atlas of Mammals of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which was produced in 2020. And this is the data map that went with it. And on this one, you can see that between 1960 and 1992, they're the red triangles that you can see on the map. And then the light green ones were present both in the from 60 to 92 and from 2000 to 2016. But from 2000 to 2016, they are the dark green triangles. So when you start looking at that, you can see for that later years, we're missing an awful lot of Britain. There just wasn't being recorded of harvest mice in those areas. You can see that there's generally the north of England have less harvest mice, and Scotland has very few records, although there is one right at the very top on the north coast, which you can just about see on this particular map. And Wales, again, have got some along the coast, but the main body of Wales, again, hasn't really been surveyed to find out what's there. To put that into better perspective, if you like, the National Biodiversity Network map is shown here on your left with the yellow squares, and you can see just what the distribution is. And just looking at that, you wouldn't have thought there's a main problem. When you look at the work that we've been doing this last 4 years, this being the fifth, you can see that where our volunteers have been, the green dots are positive squares where harvest mice have been seen. The ones which are clear with that line through them are where surveys have been carried out, but no evidence has been found. So we've still got that general distribution, but there's an awful lot of spaces in between that are empty that we don't know what the answers are. And this is what we need to be concentrating now. And basically, we need people to just go out to their local area and see if you can't find a harvest mouse nest. It's not as quite as simple as that, but you'll see as we go on, you can definitely help to go with it. There are a variety of ways that we can actually record harvest mice. You can actually be lucky enough to see them out in the wild. I say that, but in the last sort of 45 years, I think I've only ever seen one wild run away from me. I've caught a few in Longworth traps, whether they be set on the ground or they're set up into the canopy of the grasses, as you can see on the right-hand side. There's a few dead ones that we actually get brought in by cats and other things. We can pick them out in owl pellets, and since at the moment we're actually doing a lot of owl pellet work looking for greater white-toothed shrews, which is the new invasive species that's appeared in the UK, we can get records from other species at the same time, which is becoming quite important. We can put out tubes for them, and the one there you can see in the picture has got a little 11 millimeter grid on it, so that only harvest mice and pygmy shrews can actually get through that diameter, and some of the smaller mammals, when they're young, they can get access as well, but basically it restricts what goes into the traps within that. People have used thermals to try and find out whether the nest has got occupants or not. And this works quite effectively, but not in really dense vegetation. We have camera traps, which is a new project that we're also involved in with the Society, where we're actually encouraging people to put out these little tubes with a camera in it, put some food in there, and a variety of different small mammals will actually then come in to be identified and recorded. And harvest mice are actually using these on an infrequent basis. And then the ones that are left are, you can pick them up on audio devices that you leave out there, so audio moths and other things similar to that. And there has been an attempt to actually train dogs to sniff out harvest mice nests, but that's not widely used. That's quite a unique service, that particular one. So the main thing we tend to look for is this nest, and the nest here is a breeding nest which is now redundant. Within the ecology of the harvest mouse, you have about between 4 or 5 litters per year. With each new litter, the female will make a brand new nest. So although we can find lots of nests in a location, we can't actually tell how many harvest mice actually produce them. And what's important with this is that the harvest mouse has what's called a prehensile tail. It can use its tail to wrap around vegetation in order to secure its footing so that it can actually lean from one grass stem to another and reach forward with its forearms to try and grab the other leaves to then weave it into this ball. But the tail becomes quite important in that stability whilst it's trying to do that. And this is what basically happens. About 10 days before giving birth, the female will start to build a nest for her young to be in. And the average size, as you can see, is about 6 to 10 centimeters. And what's important here is that the animal can hang on to one grass stem, reach across to the leaves from another, and then pull that leaf through its teeth and actually then split along the veins of the leaf. And therefore, to have 2, maybe 3 of these splits allows you to actually weave quite nicely a tight ball. This tight ball is still connected to those grasses. They don't cut the leaves off, they simply have them as live, which is why you find the nests are green in the summer. As we go into the autumn and the leaves are losing their chlorophyll, then the nests also turn brown, which makes it quite difficult. It's like a needle in a haystack trying to find these nests because they are the same colour as the vegetation. Trying to work out where exactly this vegetation and what type of vegetation becomes quite important. It's got to be something that the harvest mouse can reach from one stem to another to pull that nest together. The closer the stems, the easier it is to do. And therefore, although you've got these corn stalks on this one, most of the time the corn stalks are too far apart, because they're now drilled with machinery, and therefore they don't tend to use cornfields as such, but they will use other grasses that grow in a similar way. So these are the tall grasses, things like reed canary grass, and some of the tussock grasses like cocksfoot, and then other things like Phragmites. And you'll see these in the area. You don't need to identify the grasses, but it does help to a certain extent. So here you can see there's some Phragmites, but because you can see through these Phragmites stems here, and there are no leaves at this level, then that's not going to be a good place for harvest mice to try to build a nest. One, it's going to be very visible, but 2, there's nothing there that the harvest mouse can actually use, and the gap between those stems is too big for a harvest mouse to reach across between. So it's trying to find that right habitat to start looking and not wasting your time thinking, that's got tall vegetation, is it suitable? So when we try to find out where, using the results from previous surveys, you can see the areas that people have found them in before. Okay, and you can see the best ones at the moment are field margins. Okay, and also the worst ones is in the middle of a field. But the important thing is here, it all depends in your region. Yes, field margins are good, providing they've had long-term habitat that hasn't been cut, hasn't been disturbed, and therefore you've got what is classified as rank grass. They're quite useful. When we look at marsh reed beds, we're not doing too badly. Again, it all depends what's happened from past. As we get more detections, this will actually change to work out what is the best habitat for harvest mice to use. So it's just trying to work out what they actually need. Harvest mice build their nests in tall vegetation to try to get away from the other small mammals that are actually in a similar grassland habitat. And therefore, if they can go up into the stalk zone, generally they move away from the field voles, the wood mice, the bank voles. And you've got to work out where that's going to be. So in this picture, in the foreground, we're very much into a hay meadow, but the height of the vegetation isn't that tall. Where all the leaf is, it's really down the bottom. And we're not going to find harvest mice in this particular area. But as we move down towards the water at the back, you can see much taller vegetation that is going to be more useful for harvest mice, that you can't see through it, and therefore that's the area that you're really going to concentrate. The people in this picture at this time are actually looking for field voles. Now we've got a different aspect. You can see some of these taller grasses. This is Cotsfoot. And in here, if you look on that lower sections, you can see, don't look at, you've got the quite close stems quite come together rather than the seed heads. The lady off onto the left-hand side, she's looking for field voles again. But the two gentlemen on the right, they're actually looking for harvest mice in this little section. And you can see more better habitat again at the back of the picture where the vegetation comes up, and you start to look at some of the rushes and some of the reed canary grasses and reed sweetgrass and things similar to that. Here we have a hedgerow next to both a road and an arable field, and here the grasses have grown up along the fence line here through all the bramble. But then we've had someone come along and we've cut the vegetation down, and because they've then exposed this area, the harvest mouse nests stood out a little bit to me as I drove past. So that's another good habitat. You can see it is this tall stem vegetation of the grasses that we're looking for, and how close together those stems are. And again, here you can see there's basically a couple of nests very close together on this one, just on that left-hand side. If you can't see them, there's one just below the rail, and there's one about just below that as well. Probably from the same animal, but we can't really say. It's not that easy to work it out. Here again, no point looking on the right-hand side. That's all short grass and not going to be suitable. But the ditch and the taller vegetation is where the harvest mice are going to be. Here we have an area, this was actually in January, so a lot of this reed canary grass here has actually fallen over. It's probably better to look more towards the start of winter rather than this late in the season, but it's still possible. With that fallen vegetation, you still have to sift through it to try and find the nest, and because they're still attached, they tend to remain there. Although quite often it's better to look in stalks that are actually vertical. But again, it was a nice site. I think this one, just within view there, we found something like 13 nests in that small area. Here we're onto some of the sedges. Again, you can see just how thick the vegetation is. And again, as you comb through that area looking for nests, then unfortunately, because it's a carex, it does be rather sharp, so gloves are required. You can then find a variety of different nests within that area. And this is a site that we find nests every year without too much difficulty. They'll also go on to the banking, onto the right-hand side there. That's all got rank grass, tall, tussock grasses, which will be ideal for them as well. And even some of the other habitats that are there. So on the right-hand side, we've got a wild bird mix for a set-aside. And on the left-hand side, we've got a recently cropped elephant grass, and we found harvest mice in both of those because it's the right kind of structures, the taller vegetations, close stems together, that actually give the right type of habitat that goes with it. Try and find a site to go to can be quite difficult, and that's sometimes daunting. Now that you've got an idea of the type of habitat to look, you might then talk to yourself, well, how do I then find out, has anyone been here before? So there is this map, which has got a QR code and also a web address that you can actually zoom into on this one and click on one of those squares, and it'll bring up a GIS cloud here that tells you which TEDRED and HACTRED it is, which county it's in, and what surveys have been done before. And you can see here that in 2001, they had a count of 27. 2002, it was only 9. 2001, it was 7. And it goes on from there. So you know that it's a good site. So if you haven't found harvest mice before, it's sometimes worthwhile starting off by going to a site where you know that they are there so you can get your eye in. So when you go to a new site that no one's been to before, then at least you know that you can find harvest mice nests to start with. It's really demoralizing to go out and look and not find any, because you then start to question whether or not you're actually looking in the right way or not. So in order to try and find that site, if you haven't got a group that's actually going to hold an activity, an event to go with it, and most local groups will do that for you, then you can actually go out for yourself quite easily. And what you do is, I tend to use either Google Maps or I use OS Maps, and I turn it into an area that I know, and I turn it into the landscape view, so you get a view of what it looks like, and I zoom in to look at the habitat that's there, and then if possible, can I access that through either footpaths or from the road, and can I find the local landowner, say, do you mind if I have a look? And then what we do is we then go into what I call street view, using that little yellow man, and from that you can basically look over the hedge. And I'm just going to show you this. I'm just going to stop sharing this one now, but I'm going to go back and share a different page. He says, not sure which one I share. Bear with me 1 minute while I just have a quick look. No. You might see yourselves in the moment. Just bear with me while I just work out. I'd stop that one. Sometimes it gets too technical for me. All right. Hopefully you can now see. This is Google Maps. Let me just get rid of a few things. We'll put in a search. Right, let me just. So we'll go to a national nature reserve. This is Aqualake Mere near Newport. And as we zoom in, you get an idea of what's in the location. And we're looking for some rough grassland within this map here. And then what we can do is we can then, so this looks like it's grassland, that looks like it's arable. We can take our little man and we can stick him in the lane here. And straight away, we can see over this fence, yes, it's quite flat within there, but if we look over to the left-hand side, we've got a nice bit of field margin there that's got rank grass on it. So this would be a good place to do a survey. There's nothing really on that side. If we go down the lane a little bit, we might get a better view of that area. It's just on that shelter belt. And again, it goes down this edge here and around. So that would be a useful place to go. But whether or not we've got permission to go on there is the aspect. We might be able to find out who actually owns that, or there might be a footpath or something nearby. And I think just around here, we've got this area here. So we've got access quite easily in. We've got parking off the road. You're not going to do too much damage to the field. So you could probably walk in there and just have a walk down that edge of the field to see whether or not there aren't any harvest mice in this long grass, which is probably cotsfoot. If we go a little bit further down the lane, see there's a quarry there. Can't quite see over the hedges here. I think I'm actually going the wrong way. You can look back there, you've got some down that way. Just come out of this one and go and put myself back in that lane again. So that's there. Go to about here. And you can look down this section, you can see a little bit. This here, I think, is the car park to the National Nature Reserve, and which we know, again, there is suitable habitat in there. So you've got somewhere to park and somewhere to walk. If we just zip up the lane a little bit, we can look over here. You can see that's all arable and cut, but here there's a public bridleway, so you might be able to find other wets down there depending on what it looks like. So here you might just need to stop this. That brings us up to this point here. And this is the walkway through to the public bridleway, so you can just look to see on those fields if there's anything suitable. And that's one way of just saving time rather than having to try to drive around and walk out and you don't find that particular habitat. Then at least you can have that idea of where you're going to go in the first place. And then let me just go back to where we were. So yeah, that just brings us back to this slide again, saying use the maps, use that cursor, try to look at those suitable habitats, and therefore you've got a pre-survey to save yourself some time when you're out there. When you do go out, this is the minimum equipment that you need. A phone is also useful for recording. So here we've got a pair of wellies, because you don't know what you're going to be going into. Quite a lot of the sites that harvest mice go onto are quite wet. You've got a pair of gloves so that you can actually sift through the vegetation. It's almost like a fine finger search that you're doing, and you don't want to get cut by either the vegetation or the brambles, or even a bit of barbed wire that's there. The tape measures there so you can actually get some measurements of how high the vegetation is, how high the nest is off the ground, and also how big the nest is, which will help us identify whether it's a breeding nest or an individual nest that goes with it. Generally, you need the phone so you can actually keep your records, or you can put it onto a clipboard. But we would like you to use Mammal Mapper, the free app that's already been described, simply because that allows us to actually follow you in the route that you've taken, to see how long you've taken looking for harvest mice, and how long until you find the first and the second and the third nest. And if you don't find any, it actually gives us a negative record, which is very hard to actually record in most instances, but it shows us, again, the amount of effort that you've actually put in, which helps work out what's there, or either what's not there. But as far as the nests go, and here is just a picture of a nest that shows us the importance. You can see some of that weaving that's going on. More importantly here, you can see that some of the leaves on the outside of the nest that haven't quite been incorporated inside, on actually to it, have shows those shreddings. And sometimes you can just find shredded leaves that in this, like an early attempt at a nest that they've given up. You can see here that some of them are still green, some of them are actually gone brown. But if you look at the vegetation around, it's on a similar basis. That nest is about the size of a tennis ball, which is roughly what we'd expect to find for a breeding nest. And here we have a variety that go with them, and they do come in all shapes and sizes, and different material being used. That goes with it. Quite often they can be used with other supportive material. So the one on the left-hand side, which is about 45 centimeters above the ground, is actually partly woven in and around some blackthorn to give it a little bit extra support, so it's not going to get blown out in the wind. The one in the middle with the Carex grasses there isn't made of those grasses, but other grasses that grow in between, and therefore that structure is actually held up quite nicely. The other two, one's in a reed canary grass with quite broad leaves, and the one down the bottom is actually sitting on top of the tussocks of cotsfoot grass. But they all have this woven ball. They all, when you look really closely, you've got these split leaves, which is the important aspect. And if you can find the split leaves, it's fairly obvious that it's harvest mice. Oops. Then it starts to work out where. So here's the vegetation. This is reed canary grass. I apologize, I think my shadow's covering this over. You can see that in this one, it's about a third to halfway up the stalks, just in the edge. And you can see that nice ball, which sits about, it's here on the screen, which is about a third up the screen as it goes. So once you part those grasses, the nest becomes obvious because it just sticks out to those that can see them. Here's another one. This one's in Phragmites. And again, just as we parted the Phragmites leaves, the nest, which is basically center of the picture, is just sitting there. And it wasn't until we moved that those few reeds from above it out the way that it became obvious. Normally, you're not going to see it because all the reeds just sit on top of it. This one's just another one in the Carex again, and again you're having to move those grass fronds out of the way to expose that particular nest. This is one down by the green glove down the bottom there, that's in reed sweetgrass. This is on a very wet site, but again, you can see where the person's just separated those stems away to actually see where that nest is. This was quite late on in the season. A lot of that vegetation, you can see, has been knocked over by the weather, um, but it's still possible to find those nests. Here we have one very typically in Cotswolds, the tussock grass is just at the base, if you like, those tussocks in amongst the actual clump there. Sometimes you will find them around the outside and the bottom, anywhere where they can actually grab hold of some of those leaf stems to actually put them there. And that just shows you in greater detail. This one's lost some of its colour. This is probably last year's nest, and the green stems coming through from this particular year. But it's a nice tight ball. Now, someone in the chat has said, how easy are they confused with dormice nests? And the answer is, yes, they can be, but there is a difference between them. The harvest mouse is connected to the vegetation. The dormouse tends to be loose. So the dormouse actually cuts vegetation, does still split it to make that weave, but it doesn't tend to be connected. And it tends, although you can find them in reed beds and you can find them in grassland, they tend to go into more solid structures like be inside a piece of gorse or the fork of a tree or something to give a little bit more stability. But we will talk about those ones as well. But the habitats that harvest mice can use are varied. Yes, it's grassland. Here we're on a lowland heath, and this is blackgrass. And hey presto, we found a harvest mouse nest in there. So it's not a case of it's anywhere where the grasses can grow, you can actually find them. We haven't got an upper height limit at the moment. Some have been found quite high up in the foothills of the Cairngorms. That's probably the highest one of late, but you can still see that little woven section towards it. But this is much smaller than a tennis ball. This tends to be for an individual rather than growing, rather than a family. Occasionally, without having to part that vegetation, you can find a nest. So on this one, it really is a question of, hopefully you can all see where the nest is in this vegetation. And this was just walking past. It suddenly caught my eye. On closer inspection, hey presto's, there's the nest. And it basically is just here underneath that top section of, I think it's bramble, just sitting in those vertical Phragmites. And again, this is just a reminder that not all nests that you find are going to be those of harvest mice. The two on the left-hand side are both from field voles. Field voles tend to cut off lots of little pieces, which they basically just push together into a hump. Sometimes they will be a ball, but there's no way that they're actually woven together. If you pick those nests up and have them in your hand and virtually bounce your hand, then the nest will fall apart, whereas a harvest mouse or a dormouse nest won't. The two central pictures are dormice. The one at the top is a breeding nest, the one at the bottom is a winter nest. Both got that weave to go with it, but as you can see, both of these are totally independent. They're not attached to grass stems in any way, shape, or form, and therefore it can be quite easy to distinguish between them. If in doubt, we might have to go down to DNA, looking at the contents of from droppings, etc. But sometimes you can actually look in and maybe do a hair analysis, but that's just as hard almost as the DNA. The nest on the right-hand side is a little bit big for a harvest mouse. When you look closely at that tape measure, it's working out to be about 7 inches long. So we're not sure what it is. It's still got some weave in it. There are things like reed warblers, and even sedge warblers that will actually make similar sorts of nests, but these tend to fall apart quite easily, and they tend to have a definite dome at the top of them that's actually being used. Sometimes we find wren's nests have got some weave in them as well, but it's just trying to make that differentiation. This is why we basically ask for photographs to be taken so that these can actually then be looked at to try and work out whether or not it's a harvest mouse nest or not. And we can look at some of these records in a minute just to show you the ins and outs of that as well. So we've produced this handy little guide here that if you find a nest, then you can basically do a key to go down to say whether or not it's a harvest mouse and whether or not it's not, that you might find with it. And that's something that Devon Harvest Mouse Project had helped us with, but it's a very useful little guide that goes with it. And then the final thing within this one, we just go around, it's just another push for the Mammal Mapper app. All free, just have to sign up. All the records from this go on to iRecord. So let me just show you iRecord. So right, so this is my version of iRecord. I'm one of the verifiers nationally. I help oversee this for the British Record Centre and try to encourage people to submit records, and then there is if you like, a second check that we can go in and have a look to see whether or not we feel that this is the records are correct or not. Once we've said yes to this, these then go on to the National Biodiversity Network and go into the national maps that are used by the public to see where things are. So here we have a record from Shropshire. I happen to know Stuart quite well. And on here, there's a little tab that I can click that brings up the picture of what that nest looks like. So hopefully you should be able to see that nest now. You can see it's a nice little ball. If we zoom in, we can see that, yes, there are some splits on some of those leaves that are in the area. It's not in the best of condition. It's gone fairly oblong, but I would agree that that is a suitable nest to go with. So if I highlight that, I've got choices that I can make, and basically I can agree that that is a nest. Hit the save button, it disappears, and that's all done and dusted. He's got another one here, so because he's found one, we assume that he knows what he's talking about, and this one will be similar. But if we look at this one, okay, here there isn't a weave as such, it's a group of grasses together. Is there some splits? Possibly not, but there seems to be a little knot of here, and that just might be some canker in the grass that's caused this little knot, which you sometimes find, and therefore I'm not as wholly convinced that that's a harvest mouse nest as I was for the previous one. And then it moves on from there. Other people can come on directly, so down at Plumpton here with Chris Chapman, we can just pull up these nests as they go, and you can see that that's fairly convincing. And the next one down, okay, from above, again, you can actually look at that nest and you can pull it out. And again, you can see there are some splits in some of those leaves within that one. Not quite as convincing, but I'll be happy to say that was a harvest mouse nest. You've got little bits here that are just splintering off. So again, within that one, again, we can just agree with that one, and therefore that comes up to go with that as well. Right, let me just stop sharing that one. And so that's basically the talk gone as it goes. Just to see if we've got any questions within the chat at the moment. I can't see any more questions within that one. It basically looks like
we've got a couple in the chat, Derek. One was, what legislative protection do they have? Is it the same as dormouse?
No, it's not. They aren't. Although they are classified as a BAP species, and therefore county ecologists and consultant ecologists are supposed to consider them for development, they don't have any protection the same way as much as the dormouse does.
Thank you. Got another one. I do a lot of static bat detector sound analysis for my job using kaleidoscope. Would they be identifiable on the sonogram?
Yes, if you put them through to the BTO pipeline, then it'll automatically pull out any bat species as well as others. If you're using kaleidoscope, it should be possible. There is a book which you're probably aware of, produced by Stuart Newsom and some others, including I forgot who the other people are now, but basically that has got Harvest Mouse sounds in them. You can click on a web link, and you can actually then listen to the sounds that go with it. We believe that we're not sure how loud the voices are. They might have to be very close to the actual sonograms, not sonograms, the actual static detectors to hear them, but it is possible.
Oh, thank you. I'm not sure if you know about this, but a couple of people have said they've had trouble installing the Mammal Mapper app because it says it was made for an older version of Android. So I'm not sure if you've come across that issue.
I haven't, but we can mention that to our the person, and we'll try to make sure that that will be updated so the new versions will fit.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you for that. We would like people to be able to use it, so we'll make sure that we get out of our app manager to see if we can't update those.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll make a note too as well.
Yeah, and then the other one that goes on this is someone says, yes, about the dormice hibernation. Most hibernation nests for dormice tend to be at ground level or below ground level, whereas harvest mice are active all the way through the winter, and therefore although they will make nests on the ground level, these nests tend to be about the size of a golf ball. Whereas dormice tend to be still about the size of a tennis ball. And then during the summer, both of them will actually go up more arboreally into the vegetation, or higher up rather than being on tree based. I think the important thing within this is that as people have, depending on which area you're in, there's either a local mammal group near you or one nearby. They will normally be carrying out this sort of surveys. If you can't find your local mammal group, there is a link on our website which will make sure that we send out to you as well. Then basically you can drop me a line and I can advise you on your area that goes with it. And again, because you're going to have this presentation, you'll be able to see on those maps roughly where they have and where they haven't, especially that interactive one as well. We tend not to survey all the way around the year for harvest mice on the basis that we don't want to disturb nests that are in use. So our season is normally October through to about March. After that time, you'll start to get new vegetation growing, and therefore we'll start to get the animals that are becoming much more active and starting breeding again. So we tend not to go beyond that period. Sometimes, even in October, November, if the weather is very, very nice, when I say nice, I mean it's sunny, it hasn't had a cold snap or anything else, then we might find harvest mice breeding all the way through until that time, and therefore you will still find greenish grasses in new nests, and we tend to walk away from those as quickly as we can so we don't cause any disturbance. As far as the animal on the M50, which was seen last week, the mitigation is basically long grasses that are uncut. So if you're going to have any grass maintenance on the edge of the 50, then what we would suggest is that you put that down to like a 3-year rotation in some areas so that you've got the larger clumps of cotsfoot and other tussock grasses that actually develop, or you leave some areas that are left unmown so that they have those areas to actually use. They can survive, if you like, harvest. They can survive mowing, etc., provided they have somewhere else to go. And in the winter time, they will move into hedgerow bottoms, but again, they'll be competing with all the other small mammals. And they're a little bit different. Food-wise, they are nuts and seeds in the winter, and also they're insects as well. So they will take variety. There is a thought that they will also tap into sap in the early spring when they don't have many other things to go with it. Yes, if we go back to the atlas that we put in there, there are an awful lot of sites north that aren't there. It's an interesting one on there that it's always been said, and in a lot of books it's said, that harvest mice don't exist in Scotland. But having said that, we have, since we started this national survey, we found a handful of sites in Scotland. We found them both around the Glasgow and Edinburgh conurbations. We found them slightly north and south of there. We found them just across the border into from on both the east and the west. And we've even been one, as I said, has been found all the way up the top of the country. And if they've managed to get up there, then theoretically they should be everywhere else. It's that people aren't looking. And our biggest problem is that it's quite it's a skill to work out how to find a nest. You almost do need to go out with somebody else who can find one for you to say, look, this is how it's done, and therefore it moves on from that. And to emphasize that point, I've only been looking for harvest mice for 45 years. It wasn't until about 1920 that I found my first harvest mouse nest, and that was after I then went to another group over in Sheffield that were regularly surveying for them. We got our eye in, we came back to Staffordshire, we went to that National Nature Reserve you just saw, and we then found harvest mice nests, and they were the first ones recorded for the county, the first ones recorded at the National Nature Reserve to go with it. And since then, we found them across the whole county of Staffordshire in there. And every season, we find more nests and more locations. Someone's asked if there's a London mammal group. Not yet, Kat, but there's always been an interest to set one up from various people, but it's trying to get things together. What I suggest you do is that there is someone here from the Ealing harvest mouse project. And Ealing are doing quite a lot of good things for mammals at the moment. Not only have they re-released harvest mice in the area, but they've also got a beaver reintroduction. So maybe have a quiet word with Leslie Burgess from that group, and she might be able to help out with what's happening around the place. Yeah, what have you got here? We've got yeah. So the animal along the eighth. Amy, I'm not sure if is it was identified. Um, was that a dormouse nest or was that a harvest mice nest that you're talking about along the road edge, or is this part of the M50? That's in the question and answer. So if you can write another a little bit more on that one, that would be helpful. Um, Kaylee, you've asked about the partnership with Bayaza to encourage and to look at surveys. Yes, we are in partnership with Bayaza, and we have regular meetings with them, and they have their own little harvest mouse group that meets every year or met the last 2 years. And again, if you are a animal collection and you want to know how to go about surveying, then either contact me and I'll try and organise something for you with some local people, or there is the local mammal groups that again would be more than happy to come out and find out how. So yeah, please get in contact with me. My email address for ease on this one is probably going to be so I put in my oh, it's not supposed to be a gap there, but never mind. Atlas at the mammalsociety.org is my official Mammal Society one, but you can also have my private one as well. I've got that one right, no spaces. So I'll ask Katie, can you put down whereabouts in the world you are? Kaylee? Yeah, Amy. Okay. Amy, there's yes, if that was a harvest mouse due to hedge cutting, yeah, that's very possible. Because of the long grasses that grow up through hedgerows, they can be quite useful as a location for harvest mice. And if Kaylee's in Scotland, then it's about surveying your local area first. So when we talk, there are a variety of different organisations that like to release harvest mice. Harvest mice are very easy to keep in captivity, but they breed like mice. So suddenly, instead of having two, you've got the first litter will produce you about 7, and then they will actually interbreed within themselves. So very quickly, you can then double up and end up with about sort of 30 mice, and you don't know what to do with them. So if everyone thinks, I've never seen one in the wild, I'll put them out in my local area. It needs to be said that that's not what you should be doing. There are protocols to follow for reintroductions, and what we suggest and working in conjunction with Biaza, we are looking to conduct surveys for about 3 winters to confirm that there aren't any harvest mice there before we would consider putting harvest mice out. Early on, before these national surveys took place, we were contacted by our colleagues from the Devon Mammal Group, who had an influx of harvest mice from captivity, and said, our last records for Devon was about 50 years ago. We assume they're extinct. And we said, let's just carry out surveys first. So I rushed down to Devon, took them to where one of our historic sites were. We gave a presentation similar to what we've just done today. We went down, and on that site we found 20 nests. Since then, they've taken the bull by the horns. They now actually employ a harvest mouse officer for the winter months, and basically they found harvest mice throughout their county in every 10k square, and they're now going down on a lot smaller basis. Cornwall Mammal Group has done similar. They've taken the bull by the horns. They had virtually no records. They go out with their group this last 2 years, and they filled in all their 10k squares, and they're now going down to a smaller location and they've just found that harvest mice are everywhere, but you've got to look for them. You've got to find that right thing and to go with it. It tends to be much more enjoyable if you do it as a group, because you have that competition element that goes with it. Can do it on your own, but if you don't find them, it's demoralizing. But as a group, it's very much a I found one, why haven't you type thing, which works very effectively. Yeah, certainly. So you want um, it should be, Kaylee, it should be just above yours on my one. It's just it just says, it should say Derek to host some panelists. It should be everyone.
Sorry,
no,
it's just to us, Derek.
Okay.
To everyone.
I'll see if I can change it to everyone.
I've just sent. Oh, sorry, I sent the same one again. I think that's sent to everyone now, but please do let me know if not.
Yep, that's it. I can see it. Yeah, Mammal Society is all one word on that first one. As far as Norfolk goes, unfortunately, there isn't a mammal group in Norfolk, as yet. But you should be able to set up something without too much difficulty. That is, just trying to think of who the local people are. She's no longer there. There is, if you go via the Suffolk Wildlife Trust, then and ask about harvest mice, they might well be able to help you. There is a lady there whose name just escapes me at the moment that has done quite a few surveys. Are there any more questions? Have we answered everything we needed to?
I think you've gone through all of the ones that are there. If anyone does have any more questions, please feel free to put it in the chat.
As I say, hopefully you found that interesting and given you a taste, has whet your appetite to go out and find it. Really is quite a thrill to find that nest for the first time. You can capture harvest mice. This time of year, we tend to capture them on the ground using Longworth traps, which are live traps. And if you put that 11mm mesh in front, it does stop a wood mouse jumping in instead. Or if you've got camera traps, then start putting them in little long boxes, and that works quite effectively as well. But we do need your help to get more records to try and fill in that map a little bit more. If I just go back and look at that a minute, we can just show you where that map was. So it's this one here that we really want to look at. Okay, and you can see, depending on where you are in the world, it shows you how many harvest mice we found in that area. But once we go beyond Sheffield, we're starting to actually get less records. We do quite well up in the Newcastle area, where again there's been some releases. We've got a few records in Cumbria, but not that many. Lancashire is starting this year, has pulled in an awful lot more records. They weren't having some. Lincolnshire we're not doing terribly well on. Norfolk, Suffolk, within our own volunteers, not very well, but from past, when we were putting together for the National Atlas, then where's the Atlas? That's really gone wrong way. So here on the National Atlas, you can see that we're not doing too badly at all. If you consider that the from 1960 through to 2016, Norfolk and Suffolk are really quite well represented. You shouldn't have too much difficulty finding harvest mice there. But it is the rest of those areas that we need to find out whether there is a restriction. And then, of course, we've also got the other one, which is very useful, is, he says he's lost it now. This interactive page here. And if we put this that code down into I'll put that into the chat in a minute, so that you can access this interactive harvest mice map and find out again what's been seen, when it's been seen, and everything else, which will help you along that way. So let me just so that should just be in the chat there for everyone that goes with it.
We did have one more question, please. Do you need licenses for trapping?
No, you don't. The only licenses you need to trap are for shrews. And that comes on what's called a general license. It's just downloadable off the website. And that basically tells you what you need to do to ensure that shrews aren't going to die in your live traps, which is to put in a certain amount of live food in the form of either food in the form of cat food. We tend to use casters because they actually give a better nutritional value than the cat food. And within that, there is also a maximum time between looking at the traps, which is a 12-hour period. So you can't leave the traps out for longer than 12 hours. Ideally, you'd look more frequently than that, so to ensure that the shrews aren't going to die. The reason we say that is that shrews have a very, very high metabolic rate. They have to eat their own body weight a day. And if they're caught inside a small trap with not enough food, then they're not going to manage that, and they die of starvation or hypothermia, which isn't a very nice thing to finish on. But do it the right way. If you need training, then society can provide you with that training, either as individuals or a group. And there are courses later on in the year where that will be explained, but also there are courses on generally on how to find mammals and start off your mammaling career.
Brilliant. Well, I think that is everything. Uh, oh,
Right,
one
right.
more question. Uh, is there anything else we could be looking for while it's out? Anything that cohabits?
You're going to find field boll nests within that same thing because you're on the rough grasslands. You'll be looking at those clumps. If you start to look on the side of those clumps and underneath, then you tend to find field voles nests, which are just this loose, short bits of grass all piled together. And even in some of the taller vegetations that have fallen over, you will find that field voles will also go up into that above ground levels and actually create their nests in there as well. And it's still times you can find nests. There's not a problem with looking now. I was out with my local group in Staffordshire weekend before last. Snow still on the ground, ice on the ground, and we still managed to find nests underneath the snow on top of the vegetation. Once we've cleared that away and just by separating it out. And it is this case as you go into that grass, it's almost taking one layer, one lot, if you like, of stems out of the way each time and just finger searching through where the leaf layer is. For different grasses that have different positions, but where the leaves are is where you're going to find the nests. Good hunting, everybody.